I think Olympia is in a unique position because it is small enough yet wealthy enough to be, and we have somewhat of a smaller homeless population just when you compare it to major population centers such as Tacoma or Seattle, that I think we're in a unique position to be able to address it a lot more fully than a lot of big metropolises. The problem right now is that the way that we're addressing the issue isn't economically sound. We just let people kind of do their own thing and try to scrape by, offering them very minimal services, very minimal like assistance such as food stamps and SNAP and HEN. But in reality, like all those folks, when they get hurt, they go to the emergency room, they require an ambulance to transport them. And there's been multiple studies done that has shown that it is 4 times cheaper to put people into housing. You know, like what's an apartment, 1-bedroom apartment, studio apartment costs roughly around probably $12,000 to $14,000 in a reasonable market. And in that case, it's when you look at the high utilizers that homeless people are when they utilize a lot of services, like I said, jail, ERs, ambulance services, that costs 4 times as much, around $40,000 to $50,000 a year per individual.
A lot of people think that the problem with homelessness is like seeing homeless people and they're out in the streets and they're like trying to get by and they're like, oh, homeless people are gross, homeless people are smelly, they're always asking for money and blah, blah, blah. So like there's a lot of businesses that like try to kick people out and try to like dissuade homeless people from existing and just making their struggles even harder. Because a lot of people are like, oh, you're going to put a homeless shelter, that's going to ruin the neighborhood. You know, there's going to be bums around. And like people see homeless people as like a threat a lot of the time. You know, they're like there's a lot of stigmas about them, you know, being criminals or drug addicts or whatever. And so yeah, a lot of people just don't want them around, which does make it very hard to like have a safe place for them to come. You know, that isn't like way out in the woods somewhere. You know, but it's like. Olympia's a small town, but like this is still like a fairly metropolitan area, and like that's where people are going to be.
People are really hesitant to be like, well, I think there's, because people are like, oh, all these tweakers, all these junkies, and they're thieves, and well, let's execute them all. Like people go to the extreme on this, like, and I think people just stay silent when they're like, that's ridiculous. Why are you saying that? I think that's one of the main things. If you can't financially support social works, which I feel like being in the middle class or even upper middle class, it's kind of your duty to, ensure that people who have less than you, aren't just scraping. Because if you look at historically, when you have that situation, people are going to be much more prone to violence and prone to theft when they don't have the things. So I think the main thing is people can stand up when there's extreme anti-homelessness and very, very blatant classism and be like, that's not right. Like you look at poverty and all the bad things that happen from it. Like you have to remain compassionate, even though its behaviors from trauma and other things are extremely hard to deal with, like substance abuse, thievery for that substance abuse. And some people are just like kleptomaniacs and cannot not take something that's not theirs. I see that a lot working at the community care center. So it's a survival mechanism. You can't get angry with people who are trying to survive.
If you have a job and you can afford to pay rent and buy food for yourself, like why not give $1 to somebody who needs it, And I think for a lot of people it goes back to the stigma thing, like, well, maybe they're gonna buy drugs with it, or maybe they're gonna go buy, they're just gonna buy a coffee with it. They don't need it to survive. But like, to the person in need, that extra $1 to go buy a coffee actually does mean something. And can make their day better and a little less miserable.
And I think there is a lot of ignorance, and I think a lot of people are of the mindset that, oh, we need to just run these people out of town. And it's like, man, it's like, that was okay to say, like in the 50s. I mean, they were talking about running people of color out of town. Well, there's too many here; they're taking all our jobs. Same thing. It's classism. And when you look at it, it's like throughout history, no matter when we're talking about, it's about people who have a lot of money, like putting into practices and having a socioeconomic system in place that oppresses people who don't make money. So I mean, and that's been going on time, since we developed agriculture essentially as a species.